Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on how Password Manager Pro can help you compile with the GDPR. Before I start, I would like to get a quick confirmation from you all. Hope my voice is audible and the display is well and clear. If not, use the chat window and let us know so that I will be able to correct the audio video setup here. I will give 5 seconds for it. All right. Thanks for your confirmation. So let's get started. A quick introduction about myself. I work as a technical consultant and here at ManageEngine, and I have been here for 7 years now. As a technical consultant, what I do is I basically deploy security solutions in organizations across the globe. And during the implementing stage, I get to interact with IT administrators and security experts and get to know their IT security challenges. And with that little bit of experience in hand, I have prepared this presentation, which I believe will be useful for you to achieve the new privacy controls using Password Manager. So for next 30 to 40 minutes, we will be discussing about how Password Manager Pro can help you compile with the GDPR. Right. So the agenda for today is I will be starting off what you should know with respect to the new privacy controls, followed by the various types of personal data used in PMP, that is Password Manager Pro. I will also touch base of privacy controls added to the Password Manager Pro, the new privacy controls. So the crux of this webinar would be how you can achieve the GDPR compliance using our Password Manager Pro product, right? Okay. So before we get started, I would like to define few things or what you should know on the definitions you should know before getting started with the new privacy controls. So the first one is going to be the personal data. So any information relating to a living, identified, or identifiable natural person is termed as personal data. This could be directly a person or indirectly the owner of that business. The definition of personal data applies to any piece of information which can be used to identify an individual based on all means reasonably like to be used. So, for example, user ID number is classed as a personal data because it can be matched to the name of an user on the database. So, the term personal data still applies to the data even if it requires the use of information elsewhere to identify an individual. Right. So GDPR now introduce a new standard for consent. Okay, where a company relies on the consumer consent to process the personal data. The purpose to obtain such consent must be the highest standard of the GDPR. So, consent must be freely given. This means people genuine on choice ongoing choice and control over how they use their data. Consent must specifically cover the controller's name, the purpose of processing, and the types of processing activity. Consent requests must be prominent, unbundled from other terms and conditions. Okay, and it should be easy to understand and user friendly. Consent should be obvious and require a positive action to opt in. You should review and refresh consent as appropriate, right? The next one is going to be the data portability and the usage, right? So, in accordance with the GDPR, is the right for an individual to require an organization to give them back a copy of personal data they previously provided or used. Okay, so which might be a competitor as well. The data has to be provided in a commonly used and mission readable format so that the new organization can easily import and make use of the data, right? And a data breach notification process. So in case of a personal data breach, the controller, not later than 72 hours after have becoming aware of it, should notify the personal data breach to the supervisor's authority. Unless the data breach is unlikely to result in a risk to the rights and the freedoms of the natural persons. Okay, where the notification to the supervisor's authority is not made within 72 hours, it can be still accompanied by the reasons for the delay. And uh, right to access. The data subject shall have the right to obtain the controller confirmation as to whether or not personal data concerning him or her are being processed. And where that is the case, access to the personal data should be the purpose of the processing, the categories of the personal data concerned. And once again, the data subject shall have the right to obtain from the controller to erase. So everything should be forgotten and the concerning him or her without any delay. And the controller shall have the obligation to erase personal data once again without any delay, right? And there is no boundaries for this GDPR. It's not only for European nations, but it's going to happen across the business, which is all over the globe, right? Now, the next important thing which you should know before I get into the privacy controls is going to be the difference between the PII versus personal data. Okay, so personally identifiable information, PII, is term used mainly within USA. Personal data is something which has been used by, it's something which is equivalent used in the European nations. However, it does not completely correspond to the PII definition properly which is popular in the US. Okay, so the new European data privacy law, GDPR, defines personal data as the following. Okay, so these are the personal data which has been defined by them. So, personal data means any information relating to an identified or an identifiable natural person. An identifiable natural person is the one who can be identified directly or indirectly, in particular by reference to an identifier such as name and identification number. Um, right, and you can also mention the location data, an online identifier, or more factors specific to the physical, psychological, genetic, mental, economic, cultural, or society identity of that natural person, right? So this is going to be the difference between the PII, personal identifiable information, or the personal data, right? So now, uh, what actually we need to do in the GDPR compliance workflow? First, discover what is the personal data, protect that personal data properly, and you also ensure that data is being managed securely by taking necessary steps like encrypting the data when it's getting stored and other stuff, and also maintain records of who has access to what data, right? So this is some the compliance workflow which needs to be followed. All right. So the other important thing which you would know or which you should know is the difference between the controller and the processor. Okay. So controller means the natural or a legal person um, who determines the purpose and the means of processing a personal data, where the purpose and means of such processing are determined by a member of a state law or a union. Okay, so here that's a controller, and a processor means a natural or a legal person or an agency or any other body which process the personal data on behalf of the controller. All right, so who maintains the records of the data they hold, right? When it comes to the Password Manager Pro, any admin who adds or make use of the enterprise passwords or data will be considered as both controller and processor, right? Because he is adding it, so he will be a controller, and he makes use of the passwords or data, he is going to be a processor. Whereas when it comes to a normal role like a password user or an auditor, they have access to the enterprise data which is being shared by an administrator who is the controller, right? So when so a password user is going to be a processor, whereas an admin or a password admin can be both a controller and a processor. This is for the enterprise passwords. So in Password Manager Pro, we also have an option where every user, whether he is an admin or a normal user, they can have their own personal password stored. In this case, every user who is going to add the personal passwords is going to be a controller as well as a processor. All right. So these are the few information which I thought will be useful before explaining how Password Manager Pro can help you achieve the GDPR. Right. So what we are going to do is we have classified few personal data, especially the enterprise passwords and information related to it. We have classified it and we have given a segregation, right? So these are the few personal data. So when I say here users, anyone, whether it's a manually added user in Password Manager Pro, or if you have imported from AD, LDAP, whatever, when a user gets added inside this application to access this, right, his full name, username, email address, all those information is going to be stored, which we consider as a personal data. Once again, any enterprise data like passwords, service name, and whatever, any password which you're trying to store and manage using Password Manager Pro, which is the term we refer that as a resource, right? Even that is going to be personal for your organization, right? So once again, that will have the resource name, the domain name, the location, resource URL, etc. So all these are also considered as a personal data. And we do have an option where you can manage your SSH keys and SSL certificates using Password Manager Pro. So any username, SSH username or IP address or anything, etc., will be also considered as a personal data in this. And once again, the common name and the certificate, the subject alternative name. So all these information we have classified as personal data and we have taken the necessary actions. However, these are not only the personal data which is going to be in the product. You also have an option to add your own additional fields. You can add your own resource additional fields and account additional fields, which once again can be personal to your organization. So even that can be defined as personal data in Password Manager Pro. Right. So this is something. Now let's get into the new privacy controls added to this product. Okay, as an security IT security tool, Password Manager Pro complies with GDPR, as it is critical for any organization that uses our product to manage its privileged account credentials, as well as remotely access sensitive resources. With that in mind, we provided a set of GDPR focused provisions to uphold the data subject rights and ensure that their personal data is being completely protected all the times. So let's get into the new privacy controls and look at them one by one. First one is going to be masking personal data fields and access locking, right? Form fields that contains personal data, which we discussed a couple of slides back, right? Such as URL, DNS name, email address, server names, and more. it's been masked all the times to enhance the protection, right? So additionally, Password Manager Pro also provides an access logging, where when I say it's been protected, it's going to be masked, right? And when you try to retrieve this masked information, what we do is we additionally provide an audit event stating that the mask field is being retrieved and it's being seen by an user. Okay, so that is going to be the access logging. I will quickly show you that information from the product so that it will be very useful for you. Okay, so I'm showing here a resource. Okay, and when I try to edit the resource, I will not be able to see the DNS name here or the resource URL, which is going to be personal, right? So if I want to view it, I have to click on this unmask option and I can see the DNS name, right? And so you can see the same way it also works for the resource URL. So this is something which is on the resource part. The same way, if I go to any user, all right, and if I try to edit the user here, I will still have the email address which is going to be masked. So if I unclick it, it's going to unmask it. Okay, so this is the provision to masking all the sensitive information. And as I mentioned, when this sensitive information is being retrieved, you will see an audit event stating that URL viewed along with the date and time stamp. Okay, so this is for the resource, the DNS name is being viewed. Okay, this is one thing. The same way, user audit, uh, when I try to view the email address of that particular user, it says user personal data being viewed with the date and time stamp. So this is going to be the um, access logging of the personal data. Okay, so this is the first privacy control which has been introduced by us. So the next one is going to be consent for connected devices. Okay, when the Password Manager Pro administrator sets up an integration with any third-party services where there is sharing of personal information, right? So when you get this product integrated with a third party like Google Authenticator for TFA, or we have an option to we have an option to integrate with Dropbox, where the encrypted HTML file can be viewed from the mobile devices of the user using the Dropbox integration. So whenever we do this, we go ahead and we get a consent from the administrator that the personal information is going to be shared. Okay, so let's quickly look at the TFA and see the. I'm going to quickly integrate the Google authenticated TFA, and I'm going to see what concern it's going to pop up. Okay, so here I'm selecting Google Authenticator and I'm clicking on Save. It says, so please note that if you have enabled TFA via phone factor, RSA, or something, okay, one or more of the following data of the user will be sent from Password Manager Pro to the TFA servers. So here we are going to send the email address, username, and the domain name. So we are taking the consent from the administrator of the product before revealing this personal information with the third-party application integration, right? So this is one. Same way, if you go for integrating with Dropbox, we also do that. So any TFA you do, we all ensure we get the consent before getting the integration done. So this is another privacy control which has been added. Now let's look at the third option: transparent data encryption. TDE, protected SQL server databases. Okay, so for Password Manager Pro installation that functions with an SQL server as backend, um, TDE is used to achieve the encryption at the rest, which means any data which is going to be in the SQL server and which is not currently used will be at rest, right? So that data is going to be encrypted. It's not only the data. Using the transparent data encryption, all the data as well as the log files stored in the SQL server, okay, we ensure that it's going to be encrypted to ensure that malicious parties or any rendered unable to read the data during circumstance when the data files are being stolen. Okay, so once again, the key used to encrypt the database is also secured further with a certificate to enhance the protection. So with the SQL Server as backend database, you can enable the TDE on the SQL Server itself, which will ensure all the data and the log files which are stored inside the database is going to be encrypted and secured, right? So this is with regards to the SQL database. And yeah, the backup file encryption. Okay, so we in Password Manager Pro, we have an option to create backups either on demand, or you can even schedule that. Okay, so which are, once again, it's going to be a zip file. Okay, the backups zip files are encrypted with the Password Manager Pro's master encryption key, and then it's going to be stored in the destination which you specify. Okay, so in the case of MS SQL Server as backend, the backup file will be encrypted only if the backup destination is specified in the server in which the Password Manager Pro is installed. All right, so I will show you that option in the product. So this is the database backup where you can schedule the backups and specify the destination location. So all these backups will be in a zip file format, and it's going to be encrypted using the Password Manager Pro, the master key which gets generated during the product installation. And so if someone steals the zip file, they will not be able to do anything with it unless until they have access to that master encryption key. All right. So this is the another privacy control which has been introduced in Password Manager Pro. The next one is the privacy setting for the canned reports. Okay, so now we allow the administrator or the authorized administrator, in other words, to control the levels of personal data which can be included during the canned report generation process. So administrators can choose from an exhaustive list of personal data, deciding whether each input in the list should be completely omitted from the reports or included as a redacted information. All right. So I will show you that in the product. If you get into the product, we have introduced something called privacy settings. Okay. So these are the personal data which I showed you in the couple of slides back. Okay. So now you can so with these personal data are going to be used in the reports when you export them in a PDF format, right? So you now have an option to omit a personal data. Okay, so you can, if you select or redact, it's going to be completely this information will not be available in the report. Or you can simply conceal the data. In other words, you can just mask that value. So if you mask the value, this information will be there, but you will not be able to see it in a clear text format. It will be just masked. Okay, so this can be sent for user resources, SSH keys, or SSL certificates as well. So this is only mainly for reports, and when you export the reports in a PDF format, you can choose an option whether it has to be redact or it has to be masked. Okay, now the next let's look into the next privacy control: password protected exports. Okay, so all the export operations in Password Manager Pro are now provided with the additional password protected option to add another security layer. Okay, so for password protection, the authorized administrator can either set a single password which can be uniformly used for all export operations across Password Manager Pro, or allow users to define their own passwords for the exported files. Apart from all this, okay, the option to export resource group details to an offline HTML file uh, includes file encryption as a default setting. and cannot be disabled even by an authorized administrator. So everything is going to be encrypted here, and I will show you how this works. So same way, you have to go to admin, privacy settings, and encrypted exports. Okay, so you can when you check this box, enable automatic encryption for all exports from resource groups, audits, and reports. Right? You can either set a passphrase manually here, or you can allow the users to set their own passphrase. So once this information is done, all right, I'm just saving it, and now I'm going to try and export some data from this tool. When I try to export it, it's going to ask for an passphrase. So I will just do this for you. So here you see it's prompting you to type in the passphrase. So once you give the passphrase, it will be encrypted based on it. This is not only for export of passwords, any information, even for reports or anything you do inside the Password Manager Pro application, it's going to ask you for that passphrase. Only then it will allow you to export the information from the product. Okay, so now let's look at the next privacy control, which is deleting user accounts. So earlier we had only an option to delete the user account, which means when an employee or a user leaves your organization, you as access to Password Manager Pro. Okay, what we do is we delete that user completely out of the tool. But now we are going to give you two options. One is delete the user completely again, which will remove all the records except the audit trails. Okay, except that everything will be removed. We also have an option now, move to a trash, which means the user account is moved to a separate trash folder. This action will not delete any of the user's data from Password Manager Pro. If you want, you can just redo the trash. Okay, so I will just show you where it's going to be. For I'm going to try and delete this user from the product. When I'm trying to delete it, you'll see it's going to have a delete and move to trash option. When you click on delete, all the information except the audit trails will be deleted. When you move to trash, all the information related to that user will be still maintained in Password Manager Pro. However, he will not be able to access the application. All right. So this is another privacy control with regards to the personal data which we have provided. All right. So let's look at the next one, IP restrictions. Okay, so now you using the new versions, you can configure the IP based restrictions for various forms of communication to Password Manager Pro. So you can access Password Manager Pro using a browser, or it can be accessed using an API call. So we have an option where you can integrate with other applications so that you can programmatically retrieve the passwords from this tool, right? So that's the API call. And once again, it can also be from the mobile apps, the browser extensions, or with the agents which are deployed on the target machines. Okay, so you can restrict all this so they cannot remotely connect to our application. So this once again is an option here, IP restrictions. So you can either allow a IP address range from which users can access the web console, or you can also block a particular set of IP address. So anything other than that can be accessed. The same way, API access is nothing but other applications which are trying to integrate with Password Manager Pro can be either allowed or blocked by specifying the range and the agents which are getting deployed on the target machine. Okay, so this is to ensure that only from a certain set of IP or a certain range of devices and applications can communicate with Password Manager Pro. So any unauthorized application or anything cannot be remotely connected to the Password Manager Pro to retrieve informations from it. All right. Uh, so that's it. And let's get into the next one, managing non-users email address. So we have an option for scheduling a lot of actions like account discovery, importing users from Active Directory, resetting the passwords every 90 days, report generation, right? So these are all the operations which you can schedule from Password Manager Pro, and based once the operation is done, you can also send notifications to the users from this tool. Okay, now when this task completes, okay, you can even send an email notification to a user who is not present inside this product. You can simply give any email address and you will be able to send a notification. It's not mandatory they should be a part of this product, and they should be associated with the user, right? So those kinds of email addresses can be deleted if required. So in admin, we have something called notification email addresses. So you will see all the email address which are not associated to a user, but still they are being configured for notification. So you can simply select those email addresses and you can click on delete. So they will not receive any further um, notifications. This is to ensure that no person is getting information about the personal data which is being stored inside the Password Manager Pro application. All right. So this is the next privacy control, and yeah, we have few more. Let's quickly discuss on that as well. Okay. So the next one is going to be personal password storage and export settings. As I mentioned to you earlier, all whatever we have discussed so far is going to be based on the enterprise passwords. Once again, every user have their own person. They can have their own personal password stored inside this tool, which can be protected with the passphrase. Okay, so initially when they connect to the personal tab, they will be prompted for a passphrase, and they have to type in that every time to access this application. And we also have an option to export the passwords either in a PDF, or the personal passwords either in a PDF or XML format. Okay, so when they try to export, once again the passphrase which is used for the personal tab will be used as a passphrase to encrypt these PDF and XLS file. In other words, only if they type in that passphrase in this offline files, they will be able to access it. All right. So this is another one of another privacy control added to the personal tab. So the last one is going to be the emergency measures. In a rare scenario that a suspicious activity is sensed in this product, okay, but has not been identified, so it has went beyond the GDPR time frame, which is 72 hours, but you're not still able to identify the root cause or from where it's been happening. So we have a set of recommended best practices provided in this product. Okay, so that is to just stop the application of getting exposed to unwanted or to any unsuspicious activities. Okay, so that is being provided in the admin tab once again. So when you go to the admin tab, you will see emergency measures. So these are the measures which we call stop API calls from. You can disable it. You can disable the agent communication, because using this, any application or servers or any user can remotely connect, right? Though we have ensured the security that this communications happens only over SSL and with auth tokens or encrypted. So we have taken the necessary steps, but these are the only places used where an attacker can connect to the Password Manager Pro. So if he breaks the security and if he still connects, still you can disable these access here. So this is the first two one, and the third one is a stopping the SSD server, which is once again an API which is going to be available here. So you can stop the SSH CLI server from here, right? So these are the emergency measures, and once again, when such attacks happens from this product, you can immediately trigger a message from this tool to all the users of the product that so and so activity is being identified. So ensure that all your personal data is being protected properly. So you can send a notification. You can either send it as an email alert or an online alert. Okay, can be done from this tool. So that is another emergency measure which is being provided. So yeah, These are the privacy controls which we have added inside Password Manager Pro to ensure the Password Manager Pro application can help you in achieving the GDPR compliance. Okay, so using all these privacy controls, you can achieve GDPR compliance in the Password Manager Pro, which is deployed in your environment. Great. So now it's time for questions. Please raise your questions through the chat window and I will answer to it now. Okay. So let me see. Yes, we have got a question asking, is there any updated best practice that includes the latest versions and features? Yeah, the privacy controls, whatever I explained you, is going to be the updated one. So how do you get this privacy controls configured? We have a report, dedicated report here in the compliance called GDPR compliance report. Just generate this report and whatever I discussed now, it's been documented here. So you can simply follow those things one by one. So here you're going to get all the privacy controls which are being discussed by me. So you can start looking into it and ensure you enable all these privacy controls to achieve the latest best practices. All right. So, and I have got a question that someone is requesting for the recorded session of this video. Sure, the session is recorded and I will send it to you. All right. So, if you have any further questions for me, please do raise them. All right. So I don't see any more questions. So what you can do now is, if in case you have any questions or if you need the video of the recorded session, I mean the recorded video of this webinar, please do send an email to Password Manager Pro-support at ManageEngine, or you can also send a direct email to me to praveenkumar.k@manageengine.com, so I can send you a copy of the recorded session, as well as if you have any questions related to the new privacy controls and Password Manager Pro, I will be able to answer them. All right. Once again, thank you for joining the webinar in your busy schedule. Hope this was useful and informative for you to configure the new privacy controls. So yeah, that's it. Have a nice day, guys. Cheers then. Bye.